Stories like Rahab are so inspiring. She was able to move beyond her past to step out in faith and joined with God's people. But so often, when we are trying to pursue all that God has, His best, His impact, we face those reminders of the failures of the past. A great example is one of our members and a personal friend. Now, to the good, he absolutely knows that God has positioned him where he is. He knows this is where he is supposed to bring impact. He recognizes he is God's delegated representative. He grasps all that. But so often he has to battle through that insecurity, those reminders of past mistakes and past failures. Now, we know that is not from God because there is no condemnation for those who are in Christ. And it's those challenges set up by the enemy to limit impact, to limit your progress, to hold you back. And remember, the enemy really only has three tactics. The first is disbelief. If he can convince us not to believe God's best, His promises, we miss out. The second is distraction. That if he can get us focused on anything other than, again, God's call and His best, it automatically brings limitation. And then finally is discouragement. If he can keep us so discouraged, so beat down that we don't step out in faith, in confidence. And those reminders of the past in so many ways are pretty much all three. It causes us to begin to doubt God's plan for us, that we're not worthy. It is a distraction. While most distractions revolve around hobbies and entertaining ourselves, that distracts us from all that God's calling us to. At the same time, guilt and insecurity is its own form of distraction, which leads obviously to discouragement. Again, that confidence that God truly wants to move in and through us. So how can we practically address this? How can we approach this and move forward in victory? And this is where it gets really real. We are reminded to submit to God, resist the devil, and he will flee. But how do we make that real? How do we move that from a concept to an application we can lay hold of to gain the victory? And the first is submit to God. What has God said about us? Despite our prior failures, God says that we are the righteousness of Christ. So while we remember the mistakes of the past, God looks at you through the lens of Jesus and He sees you as righteous. He sees you as beloved. So we have to first align with, what does God say? That is that submitting to God. What does He say? Not what does the enemy remind us of. And then submitting to God leads immediately to resisting the enemy. And how do we resist? It's meditating on what God says, whatever is applicable in the challenge you're facing, the thing you're working through. Resisting the devil is meditating on God's promises. Remember, meditating is not just thinking about it. It's personalizing it, speaking it out. Just like when Jesus was tempted by the enemy, what did He do? He repeated God's promises. Just like that, you and I, we submit to God and we resist the devil by we take those promises, what God has said, we personalize it and repeat it to ourselves. Repeat it out loud. Say it loud, say it proud. The response is, the result is the enemy will flee. We can't change our past, but the past doesn't wipe out, it doesn't negate God's amazing plan for you. And the only way that the enemy can hold you back, limit you from reaching, from attaining everything that God has for you, is by just convincing you somehow, some way, to give up on it, to not pursue it, to not believe in it. Submit to God, resist the devil, and he will flee. And back to Rahab. Because the beauty of that story is, despite her past, despite the risk of being looked down upon by God's people, she stepped out in faith. And the result was, she is in the genealogy of Jesus Christ. God has better things for his people than we can even imagine. The enemy would try to remind us that we're unworthy. But the beauty of it all is, Jesus made you worthy.